There are exactly 3 psychological moments that can permanently rewire an INFJ's entire personality. Not gradually, not over time. In a single moment, the person who gave everything becomes someone who needs nothing. And here's what's terrifying. Most people never see it coming. This isn't a bad mood or temporary withdrawal. This is a complete psychological transformation that rewires how they see the world and everyone in it. The person who was always there for everyone becomes unreachable overnight. The one who gave endless second chances starts cutting people off without explanation. The helper becomes a strategist. These 3 specific psychological triggers don't create weakness in the INFJ. They activate the most sophisticated defense mechanism the human mind can create. And once you understand them, you'll never look at INFJ behavior the same way again. Before we start, please hit the like button, comment, and subscribe so you won't miss any of our weekly deep dives into the world of personality types. And if you're looking for a deeper understanding of yourself and your INFJ personality, browse our favorite INFJ products in the description and click the link in the comments to take our favorite free personality test. The INFJ Blueprint, built for connection, not combat. Before we dive into what breaks them, you need to understand how INFJs are psychologically wired, because their entire mental architecture is designed for one thing: deep, authentic connection with other humans. Their dominant function, introverted intuition, constantly scans for patterns and future possibilities. They're always 3 steps ahead, seeing where relationships are heading, predicting problems before they happen, understanding people's hidden motivations. It's like having emotional radar running 24/7. But here's where it gets complicated. Their auxiliary function, extroverted feeling, doesn't just observe emotions, it absorbs them. An INFJ walks into a room and immediately downloads everyone's emotional state. They feel your stress, your sadness, your excitement, as if it's their own. There's no off switch. And this creates a person who's incredibly gifted at understanding and helping others, but terrible at protecting themselves. They build relationships by investing genuine psychological resources. They remember what matters to you. They show up when you need them. They anticipate your needs before you even know you have them. The problem is they normalize one-sided relationships. They give and give and give, but they stop expecting anything back. They tell themselves that's just how love works. That's what good people do, that expecting reciprocity is selfish, so they create this unstable psychological structure that runs on emotional deficit. They're constantly pouring from an empty cup, but they've convinced themselves the cup doesn't need to be filled. Their natural empathy, which should be their superpower, becomes a liability. People learn they can dump their problems on the INFJ and get unlimited emotional support without having to give anything back. The INFJ becomes everyone's unpaid therapist, crisis manager, and emotional dumping ground. Years pass like this. The INFJ accumulates unprocessed emotional weight, like an invisible dam building higher and higher. They look fine on the outside. They're still helpful, still supportive, still wise. But internally, the pressure is mounting. They start running on fumes, but nobody notices because they're too good at hiding it. When they mention being tired, people say, yeah, me too, as if everyone's exhaustion is identical. So the INFJ stops mentioning it and internalizes everything. They tell themselves they need to be stronger, more patient, more capable. They keep pushing harder while everyone around them expects them to accelerate. The dam keeps building and nobody sees the cracks forming. This is the setup. The INFJ blueprint creates a person who's incredibly valuable to others, but incredibly vulnerable to exploitation. Their greatest strengths become their greatest weaknesses when people take advantage of their giving nature. And when that dam finally breaks, when those 3 psychological triggers activate, everything changes. The helper disappears and something much more strategic takes their place. Trigger 1, the betrayal of sacred values. The first trigger that forces an INFJ into survival mode isn't about personal offense, it's about the violation of their deepest moral code, the principles they thought were universal, the basic rules about how humans should treat each other. See, INFJs don't just have values, they have what I call sacred values. These are non-negotiable principles that govern their entire worldview: fairness, authenticity, mutual respect, the belief that good people protect innocent people, that trust, once given, shouldn't be weaponized, that love means showing up, not just saying the words. These values aren't just beliefs to an INFJ, they're the foundation of their identity. They assume everyone shares these basic principles, even if they express them differently. When they invest in someone, they're not just giving their time or energy. They're extending trust based on the assumption that this person operates from the same moral framework. But then something happens that shatters this assumption. Someone they trusted completely lies to them about something fundamental. Not a white lie or omission, but a deliberate deception that reveals the person never shared their values at all. Or they watch someone they respected hurt innocent people and feel no remorse. Or they realize someone has been manipulating them for months using their kindness as a tool for personal gain. The moment of realization is devastating. It's not just this person disappointed me, it's this person operates from a completely different moral universe than I thought. The INFJ's brain starts recalculating everything. If this person can do this, then who else might betray these sacred principles? If someone I trusted this much was capable of this, then how can I trust my judgment about anyone? This is where their extroverted feeling function, which normally seeks harmony and understanding, goes into emergency mode. It stops trying to understand and starts trying to protect. The INFJ realizes that their assumption about shared values was naive. Not everyone cares about fairness. Not everyone values authenticity. Not everyone believes in treating people with basic human dignity. The betrayal creates the first crack in their willingness to stay vulnerable. They start building walls, not just around this person, but around the entire category of people who might share this person's moral flexibility. Their natural inclination to give people the benefit of the doubt gets overridden by a new directive. Assume the worst until proven otherwise. What makes this trigger so powerful is that it forces the INFJ to confront a terrifying possibility. Maybe their values aren't as universal as they thought. Maybe they've been operating in a world where most people don't actually share their moral code. Maybe their entire approach to relationships has been based on a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. This realization is existentially threatening. If people don't share their sacred values, then everything they've built their identity on becomes questionable. Their role as the helper, the understanding one, the person who sees the good in everyone, all of it gets called into question. The INFJ's response is to withdraw emotionally, not just from the person who betrayed them, but from the entire process of moral vulnerability. They stop expecting people to do the right thing. They stop believing that good intentions matter more than actions. They stop giving people endless chances to prove they're better than their worst moments. This isn't cynicism, it's strategic adaptation. The INFJ's brain has classified moral vulnerability as dangerous. Their sacred values are still there, but now they're protected behind layers of skepticism and emotional distance. They become ruthlessly practical about relationships. Does this person actually demonstrate the values they claim to have? Do their actions match their words over time? Are they capable of genuine reciprocity, or are they just skilled at taking? The person who once believed in the fundamental goodness of humanity starts operating from the assumption that most people are morally unreliable until they prove otherwise. And once this shift happens, there's no going back to the naive trust they had before. Trigger 2. The attack on inner vision. The second trigger cuts even deeper because it attacks the INFJ's most fundamental cognitive function, their introverted intuition. This is their superpower, their ability to see patterns, predict outcomes, and understand the hidden dynamics beneath surface interactions. When someone systematically undermines this gift, it doesn't just hurt their feelings, it destabilizes their entire sense of reality. INFJs rely on their N. I function like other people rely on their eyesight. They see where relationships are heading months before anyone else. They predict problems with uncanny accuracy. They understand people's motivations even when those people don't understand themselves. This isn't guesswork or wishful thinking. It's sophisticated pattern recognition that operates below conscious awareness. But here's what makes this trigger so devastating. It usually comes from someone close to them, someone who should validate their insights instead of attacking them. A partner who calls them paranoid when they predict relationship problems that later happen exactly as foreseen. A friend who dismisses their concerns as overthinking when they sense something wrong with a mutual acquaintance. A family member who gaslights them about their perceptions, making them question their own mental clarity. This isn't simple disagreement. This is systematic invalidation of their core cognitive process. When someone repeatedly tells an INFJ that their intuitive insights are wrong, imaginary, or signs of mental instability, it creates a psychological crisis. The INFJ starts doubting the very function that's guided them their entire life. The attack usually follows a pattern. First, the person dismisses the INFJ's concerns as emotional overreaction. You're being too sensitive. You're reading too much into this. You're creating problems that don't exist. Then, when the INFJ's predictions prove accurate, the person either denies they ever dismissed the concerns or finds ways to minimize the INFJ's accuracy. You got lucky. Anyone could have seen that coming. You're taking credit for obvious outcomes. What makes this particularly cruel is that the INFJ's NI function operates through subtle cues and pattern recognition that's difficult to explain logically. They know something is wrong, but they can't always articulate why in terms that satisfy skeptical minds. Their insights come as feelings, hunches, sudden knowing that bypasses rational analysis. When forced to justify these insights to someone determined to invalidate them, the INFJ sounds uncertain, even to themselves. The psychological damage is profound. The INFJ begins second-guessing their most reliable cognitive function. They start ignoring red flags they would normally trust. They override their intuitive warnings because someone they care about has convinced them these warnings are unreliable. They become disconnected from their own inner guidance system, but here's where the survival mode kicks in. Eventually, the INFJ's brain recognizes what's happening. Their NI function, instead of being used for creative future planning and understanding people's potential, gets redirected toward threat assessment and strategic defense. They start using their pattern recognition to identify who can and cannot be trusted with their authentic perceptions. Their intuitive insights don't disappear. They become weaponized. The same function that once helped them understand and support people now helps them predict betrayal, identify manipulation, and stay 3 steps ahead of anyone who might hurt them. They become strategically cold, sharing nothing real about their inner world with people who have proven they can't be trusted with that level of access. The person who once openly shared their insights and concerns becomes secretive and calculating. They still see everything, but they keep their observations to themselves. They use their knee function like a surveillance system, constantly scanning for threats and planning exit strategies. This transformation is particularly painful because it turns their greatest gift into a tool of isolation. The function that was meant to create deeper understanding and connection becomes a barrier that keeps people at arm's length. They can still read people with frightening accuracy, but now they use that ability to protect themselves rather than help others. Once this shift happens, the INFJ becomes almost impossible to manipulate or gaslight. They trust their perceptions completely and refuse to let anyone convince them their reality is wrong. But the cost is enormous. They've lost the ability to be vulnerable about their inner world, and they've learned to use their most precious gift as a weapon rather than a bridge to authentic connection. Trigger 3, the weaponization of authenticity. The third trigger is the most brutal because it strikes at the very core of what makes an INFJ who they are, their authenticity. This isn't just about someone hurting their feelings or breaking their trust. This is about realizing that their vulnerability, their genuine self, was deliberately used against them as a weapon. Think about how an INFJ operates in relationships. When they care about someone, they don't hold back. They share their deepest fears, their secret dreams, their childhood wounds, their insecurities about the future. They reveal the parts of themselves they've never shown anyone else because they believe authentic connection requires radical honesty. This vulnerability isn't casual for an INFJ, it's sacred. When they tell you about their fear of abandonment, their struggle with feeling like they don't belong anywhere, their terror that they're too much for people to handle, they're handing you the blueprint to their soul. They're trusting you with the information that could destroy them if misused. And then someone takes that blueprint and uses it as ammunition. Maybe it's during an argument when their partner throws their deepest insecurity back at them as an insult. No wonder you don't have any real friends. You're exactly as needy as you said you were. Or a family member uses their confided struggles against them in front of others. She's always been dramatic about everything. Remember how she told us she felt suicidal in college? She just wants attention. Or perhaps it's more subtle. Someone uses their shared vulnerabilities to manipulate them. They know the INFJ's fear of being a burden, so they weaponize guilt. I guess I'll handle this alone since you're always so overwhelmed. They know about the INFJ's childhood trauma, so they trigger it deliberately when they want control. You're acting just like your mother did. The moment this happens, something fundamental breaks inside the INFJ's psyche. They realize that being authentic didn't create the connection they thought it would. Instead, it painted a target on their back. Their honesty became a liability. Their vulnerability became a weapon someone else could wield against them. This activates what psychologists call the phi shadow function, the part of the INFJ that's ruthlessly self-protective. Normally, this function stays in the background because INFJs prefer harmony and external focus. But when their authenticity gets weaponized, the phi shadow takes over with a vengeance. The INFJ's brain makes an emergency classification. Authenticity is now dangerous. Vulnerability is a threat to survival. Real emotional intimacy cannot be trusted to anyone ever again. The transformation is swift and absolute. The person who once shared everything becomes strategically secretive. They develop what I call emotional compartmentalization. They create different versions of themselves for different people, never again giving anyone access to their complete inner world. They become masters of surface level connection. They'll listen to your problems for hours, but they won't tell you about theirs. They'll offer support and advice, but they won't ask for help. They'll be present for your crisis, but they'll handle their own struggles in complete isolation. What makes this particularly devastating is that it contradicts everything the INFJ believes about how relationships should work. They've always valued depth over surface, authenticity over performance, real connection over social pleasantries. But their survival brain has decided that these values are luxuries they can no longer afford. They start operating from their inferior functions, creating behaviors that feel foreign even to themselves. They become calculating about what information to share and with whom. They test people's trustworthiness through strategic vulnerability, sharing small, less damaging truths to see how they're handled before deciding whether to go deeper. The cruel irony is that this protective mechanism often pushes away the very people who might have been trustworthy. Good people sense the emotional walls and either give up trying to connect or feel hurt by the apparent rejection. The INFJ ends up surrounded by surface-level relationships that confirm their belief that deep connection is impossible. This isn't temporary emotional protection. It's a fundamental rewiring of how they approach all future relationships. They've learned that their authentic self is too dangerous to share, so they bury it beneath layers of strategic performance and emotional armor. The person who once believed that vulnerability was strength now sees it as stupidity. They've become everything they once fought against: emotionally unavailable, strategically manipulative, impossible to truly know. The permanent shift, when helpers become strategists. This isn't a phase that passes with time or therapy or good intentions. When all three triggers activate, the INFJ undergoes what I call a complete personality inversion that can last for years, sometimes permanently. The transformation is so profound that people who knew them before struggle to recognize who they've become. The person who was always available becomes impossible to reach. They don't return calls or texts. When they do respond, it's with one-word answers or polite but distant pleasantries. The warmth is gone. The genuine interest in your life has vanished. They start operating from their inferior functions, creating behaviors that directly contradict everything they once stood for. The person who valued deep connection becomes obsessed with surface-level interactions. The one who prized authenticity becomes strategically deceptive. The helper becomes the person who watches others struggle without offering assistance. Their natural judgment ability, which they once used to understand and support people, becomes weaponized against everyone around them, including themselves. They can spot people's weaknesses, insecurities, and hidden motivations with laser precision. But instead of using this insight to help, they use it to maintain emotional distance and strategic advantage. They build what I call an isolation fortress. This isn't just withdrawing from social situations. They systematically dismantle their entire support network. They delete social media accounts, change phone numbers, move to new cities without telling anyone their new address. They're not just avoiding people, they're making themselves impossible to find. The cruel irony is that they often frame this destruction as healthy boundary setting. I'm finally putting myself first. I'm done being everyone's therapist. I'm protecting my energy. There's a kernel of truth in these statements, but what's actually happening is they're choosing guaranteed loneliness over the risk of further betrayal. Their physical and emotional health deteriorates rapidly. They stop maintaining basic self-care routines. Sleep becomes either an escape mechanism where they sleep 14 hours a day, or complete insomnia where they lie awake with their mind racing through worst-case scenarios. eating becomes irregular, either forgetting to eat for days or compulsively overeating as emotional numbing. They might engage in behaviors that are completely out of character. The person who was careful with money starts spending recklessly. The one who avoided alcohol or drugs starts using substances to silence their hyperactive intuition. The person who was sexually reserved becomes promiscuous, using physical connection as a substitute for the emotional intimacy they can no longer risk. What's most disturbing is how they treat the people who try to help them. Friends who reach out with genuine concern get cut off without explanation. Family members who express worry get dismissed with cold cruelty. Romantic partners who try to understand what happened get pushed away through deliberate emotional cruelty designed to make them leave. They become everything they once fought against: cold, calculating, emotionally unavailable, impossible to truly know. The person who once gave everyone the benefit of the doubt now assumes the worst about everyone's motivations. They see manipulation and selfishness everywhere because that's what their survival brain is programmed to detect. Recovery from this state requires more than just time or positive thinking. It demands professional intervention from someone who understands personality, psychology, and trauma responses. The INFJ needs help recognizing that they haven't become a bad person. They've had a psychological break from years of unsustainable living and chronic emotional overwhelm. But here's what's crucial to understand. Not all of them recover. Some INFJs stay in this survival mode for decades, building entire lives around emotional isolation and strategic self-protection. They function, they succeed professionally, they might even maintain surface-level relationships, but they never again risk the vulnerability that made them who they were before the triggers activated. These three triggers don't create weakness in the INFJ. They create a sophisticated survival mechanism that prioritizes psychological safety over connection. The betrayal of sacred values, the attack on inner vision, and the weaponization of authenticity force a strategic shift that can save their sanity. The INFJ who understands these triggers can recognize them before reaching the breaking point. They can set boundaries before their brain activates emergency protocols. This knowledge becomes power, the ability to protect their authentic self without sacrificing it entirely. Trust me, awareness of these patterns is the first step toward controlling this incredible protective mechanism rather than being controlled by it. If you want to continue the journey to understanding yourself or an INFJ in your life, click either of the following videos where we continue to unlock the secrets of the INFJ personality type.